Hey Internet, it's RJ. Welcome back. Thanks for tuning into the show today. Now, today's episode, we're talking about your best ally when it comes to making sure you're getting treated fairly and going up against the big bad banks. Of course, we're talking about the CFPB, or Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So in this episode, we will talk about who they are, how they came to be, their process, and how you can best use them to make sure you have the firepower you need to go up against the banks. So of course, if that sounds interesting to you, then go ahead, press the subscribe button, and let's get to work. Now, right off the bat here, I'll tell you, this isn't going to be the most interesting thing in the world, but this will be one of the most important things in the world, whether you play this game of rewards and points and churning, or whether you're just a regular person, because no matter what, we all have to deal with banks. And the thing about banks is they take no prisoners, and they're not taking an L for you. Banks, like many companies, they operate off of policy and procedure. Except with banks, it's a very weird thing because it's almost like they like to be, they operate in that fear and respect lane, where I've never seen other companies who want their customers to almost be fearful of them, and go through such lengths to avoid all sorts of accountability and responsibility and liability. And this is coming from someone who's worked at many a bank and has played this game very aggressively going back all the way to 2013. These are just facts, right? This is how my experience goes with a lot of banks. It doesn't mean the people work at banks are terrible, but it's a company, and that's kind of how they operate. Again, not necessarily any different than other companies, but it seems like banks do take it to another level sometimes, primarily because they have your money, right? When it's money, it's a little bit different. And just complain about your cell phone provider or something like that. So this is why this is important. So let's start with who is the CFPB, or how they came to be. So Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, they date back to 2011. They're an agency that was founded during the Dodd-Frank reform. So Dodd and Frank were two senators who kind of led the reforms after the financial crisis, right? So coming out of that, the '08 stuff, but it had been really happening for many, many years. '08 was just kind of like the breaking point. It wasn't all banks' faults, but you had a lot of banks taking advantage of people, leaving out disclosures, making things vague. And of course, yes, you had customers right there super willing to take advantage and not ask any question at all, right? Which should be red flags. But either way, we came up with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And, I'm pulling a lot of this information from their website, which is actually very well laid out, which is a good sign, because sometimes when you're looking for information on bank sites, for example, it's actually very hard to find. But a lot of this is coming from their website. So we can go straight to them for their own quote on who they are and what their mission is. So the Bureau themselves. We aim to make consumer financial markets work for consumers, responsible for providers, and the economy as a whole. We protect consumers from unfair, deceptive, or abusive practices and take action against companies that break the law. We arm people with the information, steps, and tools they need to make smart financial decisions. Now, in addition to that, they have basically a few core principles. Empower folks, create tools, answer common questions, and provide tips that help consumers navigate their financial choices and shop for the deal that works best for them. Enforce. We take action against predatory companies and practices that violate the law and have already returned billions of dollars to harm consumers. Of course, education. We encourage financial education and capability from childhood through retirement, publish research, and educate financial companies about their responsibilities. So overall, we can go next to their functions, like how do they do this? So the CFPB was created to provide a single point of accountability for enforcing federal consumer financial laws and protecting consumers in the financial marketplace. Before that responsibility was divided among several agencies. Today is our primary focus. So again, their work includes, rooting out unfair, deceptive practices, enforcing, taking consumer complaints, enhancing financial education, research, and then monitoring the market. So overall, I thought, why try to recreate it? That's from their website. It's a very clear mission statement. It very clearly tells you who they are and their goals. And, in large case, that's kind of what we try to do here. Like, this channel is largely focused on the core stuff, the basics, the education, because that is what makes you very deadly in this game, knowing how the basics work, and that's why we focus on it so much. A lot of stuff that is skipped over. So they are a pretty good resource for things like that as well. If you want to go, read, you have questions, comments, things like that, it's a good spot to go. But really here, what we want to focus on today is the enforcement and the protection piece, right? Now, this could go a lot of different ways, but normally when you have a problem with a bank, it can sometimes be tough to get a resolution. It doesn't mean the resolution goes in your favor per se, but I mean, it can be tough to get an answer. It can really be tough to get someone to take accountability, responsibility, and definitely admit any liability. Those are my 3 principles that I think banks have become experts at dodging. And you can get stuck. I mean, it's not, the customer service people sometimes aren't even trained to answer your question or deal with your file or your claim, whatever it may be, but they're also trained to keep you away from the people who are non-consumer facing as well, so you don't get like a point of contact. I've been stuck in like infinite automation loops with the bank where you just keep uploading the same thing and you're like, I don't have the thing you're asking for, but it's a robot reading it. It's really hard to break the automation. Sometimes terms and conditions are deceptive. They're vague on purpose. They're misleading, what have you. We could go through a multitude of issues that you could come up with. And so this is really meant as your next line of defense after you've already tried to engage with the bank. That could be talking through customer service, requesting to go to management, going to a branch, things like that. You don't really want to, start off and like, hey, well, this happened, and just go straight to them. You can, but there's a good chance that they might come back, and the CFPB might come back and like, hey, did you at least try to resolve it on your own, right? This is really for after the fact. Now, I will say this, then we'll get into their actual process. They're focused on, we covered what they were focused on, financial wrongdoing when banks are treating you poorly. Rewards, still fall under that purview. So if you feel like, hey, I'm hitting the wall, getting rewards paid to me or getting a bank bonus promotion paid to me, it falls under that purview. I think they're less concerned about rewards than, other mistreatments, but it doesn't mean they won't take it just as seriously and still investigate or put it on the bank to investigate. So you can use this for a multitude of things. Again, just your second stop after you've tried to deal with the bank. So with that, what is the process? Let's start with this. What products do they cover? And then what is the process? Again, a lot of this is borrowed directly from their site. So overall, the products that they're talking about is your major banking products. So checking and savings, deposit accounts, credit cards, credit repair, credit reports, debt collection, debt settlement, money transfers, virtual currency and money services, mortgages, payday loans, personal loans, prepaid cards, student loans, vehicle loans, and leases. So again, they cover the majority of financial products. It is important to say, like, they do call out that if you think you've been scammed or they're, a scam, I would say scam is slightly different than fraud. If they say scam, they do point you in the direction towards like local law enforcement, that route. They don't necessarily go through that if like the person was impersonating to be a bank or something, but those are the products, and which is the product we're mostly going to come in contact with. So the first part of the process, let's say you've done this, something's gone terribly wrong, the bank isn't listening, you've already tried to talk to them. So when you're talking to the bank, you're going to want to document everything. It's helpful if you can just do it through system message, because then there is a document trail, but a lot of times phone calls almost easier to communicate to a person. Of course, the bank does tape those phone calls, but the problem is you're never going to get a copy of that tape. So you do just want to make sure you're documenting everything. Who did you talk to? When did you call them? The notes from the discussion. What did they say? Things like that. You want to track as much as possible. You want to collect your documentation. If it was a promotional offer, you always want to keep a copy of it. What were you given? What is your card member agreement? If it's a credit card term, your mortgage documents. The more documentation you have, the better. And that's why also going to the bank first and talking to them isn't necessarily a bad step, because that helps you build your case. Because when we jump into it here, when they say actually what is the process, they want facts, they want documents, they want to know the company you're complaining about, and then your contact information. So pretty straightforward there. So the process would be to file a complaint. They actually send it to the bank. The bank gets 15 days. They usually respond in 15 days. And then there could be some back and forth there. Basically what they're doing is they're knocking on the bank's door and say, you got a complaint. You need to address this. The bank should respond within 15 days. Now, there should be a final verdict within 60 days. Again, doesn't mean it's going to go in your favor, but there should be a final answer within 60 days. The complaint is published. All their complaints are published. There is no identifying information of yours when they publish it. They remove all of that, but it is published, and the consumer, of course, can review the response. and see what how it goes. So there might be some back and forth between you and the bank. The CFPB, is my understanding, they kind of operate as like when dad walks in the room, right? Like dad's not gonna, he just tells you and brother, you and sister, like you need to clean this up, you need to get along. He doesn't actually start picking up Legos, right? He tells you and he stands over you to make sure you guys do it and act right. That's kind of how in most scenarios. Now, if something went really bad and they're being ignored, then yes, they would probably jump in, I'm sure, but overall, they kind of function as, the parent to come in the room and make sure you're getting your answer, which again, because they can fast track it to the person, to the department that has to answer to you, you're guaranteed to get a conversation going and an answer. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to go in your favor. A lot of times banks have policy and procedure that they just won't make public, right? A bank can close your account for any reason that they want. They don't need to tell you the reason. They just need to have documented a reason on their end. So if you're upset, your complaint is about they closed my account, well, the answer could simply be they may just make the reason published to you, and that was it. But they're still in their rights to close the account. So this isn't necessarily I'm going to just slam dunk win every single time. This is really I'm being mistreated, I'm being ignored. Maybe they're trying to rip me off. Some stuff is deceptive in marketing material, you name it. But I would definitely use them. Feel free to use them. Keep this in your back pocket. Again, the more stuff you can arm your complaint with, the better. That's why we always harp on documentation, especially when we're talking to folks. If you can get those system messages, those offers, we got the stuff we kind of covered, load that up. And just try to keep it about the facts. I would leave the emotion out of it, just the facts, what happened. Feel free to put it in your own words, but the more supporting stuff you can have, the better. So overall, I haven't really had to file a CFPB complaint myself. I've thought about it when a bank doesn't pay a bonus, for example. I tend to just charge it to the game and move to the next one, especially if you know that you were trying to spoof some of the requirements, fake direct deposit or what have you. I probably wouldn't bother if you were trying to fake it, but if you were to the letter of the law, then by all means, you're well within your rights to use these guys. So again, I hope you never have to do it, but if you do, now you know the process and who they are. So again, feel free to keep them in your back pocket. The longer you play this game, the more tools you have at your advantage to fight the big bad banks, I think the better. So anyways, guys, if you like this one, drop me a thumbs up down below. If you found it particularly interesting, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, we're posting content just like this every single week, right back every Sunday with all the news you can use in the week that was in credit and finance. Course every single day over on profitablecontent.com, where we have the latest bank bonuses, credit card offers, and news stories. Question for you guys. Share your thoughts on this or share your experience using the CFPB. What are some strategies you've used? What has your experience been? What can you use to help people who may potentially be filing complaints? Love to get your thoughts on that. But anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, and talk to you very soon in the next one.